So I'm going to introduce you to a set of 10 interpersonal and small group social skills. These were introduced to me by a professor at Case Western Reserve University in Ohio named Mano Singham. And the whole reason I'm going to introduce you to these skills is because in this course, we are going to be relying on group work a lot. We've already done stuff in our groups, and that's only going to expand as we continue on through the year. And what I'm going to be able to do is give you some skills and highlight some examples of how these skills have played out in the classroom over the years. And they give you a tool, they give you some language to use to address issues that you face in your small groups, because we always run into issues because of the nature of human dynamics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to each of the 10. We'll write down some notes to elaborate on them, and eventually you will be quizzed on them, and we'll talk what that looks like later on. Okay, so let's just begin. The first one is make decisions. And I like to frame this as get started, do something. In our physics class, there have been times when I've assigned a problem to a group, and 10 minutes into the problem time, they've got nothing written down. And I ask them, what's going on? We're not sure where to get started. We think it might be this, but we might be wrong. So rather than trying it and making a mistake and learning from that, they are paralyzed with fear and don't do anything. And that's not going to work. We want to get started. So do something. Get started, because we can learn from that. We can learn from that, even if it's not what we think to be the ideal start. There's research that shows sometimes students want to see the whole path to the solution before they even get started. And that actually is not the way life works. We don't always have all the answers. We do what we can with the information we have. Okay? Now, suppose you do have multiple ideas that you want to consider trying or so forth. Ultimately, we'd like to be able to forge a consensus. What does a consensus mean? Who knows what a consensus is? Yeah.
Sort of a compromise or an agreement.
It's like a compromise, it's an agreement, it's something that everybody can buy into, right? And when I've seen students do whiteboard presentations in front of the room, sometimes it happens when, well, I thought the answer was this, but he said, and somebody gets thrown under the bus, right? That happens all the time when we're learning how to do this. It's happened even in this room, right? There's been people that tire tracks are still on them from when they got thrown under the bus. But what will happen if we forge a consensus is we don't say things like, well, I thought the answer was this, but you didn't believe me. No, we don't say things like, well, I think we should do that, but no, he changed it. No, so we will make our I statements become we statements. And what that means is your group takes ownership. We thought the energy was going to be all gravitational, but it turns out there was some dissipate. We were wrong. Or you take the credit. We all thought that was the right answer, and we were right. So the I statements become we statements. Everything is done as a group. And that's why I have you actually introduce yourselves when you do a whiteboard presentation, to start recognizing, oh, this is the we we're talking about. This is the we we're talking about. All right. Any questions so far? Number 3, maintain open and full communication. And communication is very broad. When I'm highlighting this one, I like to think about the fact that we are not mind readers. If you have an idea, say it. If you have something you don't like, you want to challenge it, speak up, okay? So nobody in this class is a mind reader. So speak up if there is something going on in your brain that would contribute to the conversation and move the group forward, all right? I have had students who were actually very quiet and reserved, actually know the answer, come up and do a whiteboard presentation, presenting a whiteboard that was completely wrong. The group members gave it a try, and then at the end, when we've corrected the whiteboard as a class, that student has said, yeah, actually I thought that, but I was afraid to bring it up because I thought it was wrong. And the people that were in his group were not happy. What? Because they just went through that whole experience of having to fix it and change it, and they felt a little embarrassed even though they shouldn't have. But speak up. Speak up, because you have a lot to contribute. We all have something to give, and we all have something to learn. Now, a big piece of that communication is listening accurately and respectfully. everybody's voice matters. Everybody's voice matters. Sometimes the quieter people are quieter because they're processing and thinking about things deeply. So when they speak, it's important that we all listen. Everybody's voice matters. I don't like to admit this, but I have had students, when I was teaching physics to 12th graders, I had a group that these 4 guys were friends, right? And they were in this heated debate about how to solve a problem. I don't remember what the problem was, but I do remember this. I remember one of them refusing to listen to his peer. I'm like, what are you doing? And then I look over there and actually hear him say, as one person's trying to explain, no, this is why. And the one person actually covers his ears and says, I can hear. I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You are in 12th grade and I'm about to hear na boo boo because I can't hear you? So that's the extreme, right? That's the extreme. We never want to see that. But not listening often happens in more subtle ways. The quiet person goes ahead and says something and nobody acknowledges it. The person who doesn't have the same peer status tries to voice something and nothing gets acknowledged. So that happens on a different way a lot and far too often. So keep in mind that everybody's voice in the group matters and we want to give them the opportunity to speak that voice. Okay. All right, number 5, build trust. Build trust. This is not something that takes time or that can happen in one class period. This takes time. This cannot happen instantly. This requires just you being your honest and authentic self. Okay? This requires you to say what your truth is. So if you come into the room, right, we're about to do a problem and you're sick, you're not feeling well, you can say, you know what, you guys, I'm really struggling. I'm not feeling very well. I was up a lot last night with just like this headache was killing me or whatever. And people generally are good people, will be compassionate and realize, okay, we'll cut you a little slack today, you know. Somebody comes in, I just got nailed by a math test. Oh my God, I'm so angry. I can't even think about physics right now because I'm just so frustrated. Okay, be worried. That's where you are. We will help you kind of come back and redirect. You don't want to be that kid though that every class period, you guys, I'm really tired. You know, I was playing video games a lot last night. Or, hey, you guys, I was looking at a movie. I went to this 12 o'clock showing and this movie was awesome. So I really can't do too much right now because I'm kind of tired. We don't want to take advantage of that. We're trying to really just welcome people where they are. Do what you say you're going to do, and then that trust will form. Okay? That trust will form. Manage conflict. Does anybody know why the word has been chosen to be manage conflict instead of avoid conflict? Because I feel like I'd rather not have conflict. It feels nice to be peaceful. Philip.
Conflict's going to happen everywhere, and you really can't avoid it. People are going to have conflicting views.
Why?
Just because people think different, not everyone thinks the same.
Not everyone thinks the same. We are shaped by our background, by our experiences, by our cultural beliefs. We are shaped by the fact that we look at the world differently. And as a result, we're going to have differences. They are not bad. It is sometimes those differences that can point us in a new direction and give us the new solution and idea that we're looking for.
I was going to say that conflict can be healthy.
Yeah, conflict can be healthy. So sometimes people confuse conflict with like physical fighting. I'm not talking about taking up a chair and then beating somebody with it, right? I'm talking about disagreements can further the conversation in ways that can lead to a productive outcome. Okay? So managing conflict is a good thing. Number 7, encourage everyone to participate. Now, in an extreme case, you know, imagine somebody puts their head down and is asleep in your group. Well, that's not really going to happen. But what could you do to bring them back into the conversation? Well, you don't want to be the one, hey guys, you're not supposed to sleep. Wake up, right? That's kind of awkward. So what I tell my students is, ask this question. Hey, what do you think about this? This is a way of soliciting their opinion in a way that's pretty safe. Hey, what do you think? What are your ideas on this? Now, it's not going to play out with people putting their heads down in this class. The more likely scenario is somebody is ready to take a quiz or a test in the next period, and instead of working on practice, maybe somebody has their notes out for that quiz or test, right? and they're removing themselves from the group because they're studying for something that isn't physics. What do you think? How can you help this? Or we're using computers, maybe plotting something in Logger Pro, and somebody goes to check their fantasy sports league performance, right? Yeah, that's likely to happen. So how do we bring them back? Hey, what do you think about this? So that's where your role as a group member is going to take place in trying to bring back those people who removed themselves. Sometimes people studying for a quiz in another class think that they're not hurting themselves or they're not hurting the group. Or they might say, you know what, I'll do this later, I know I'm doing that for myself. But what they don't think about is it has a negative implication for the whole group. Because everybody sees you doing something else, and all of a sudden now you're not as important. So we want everyone to participate to make sure that everybody's engaged in the work. Make sure no one gets left behind. Make sure no one gets left behind. Before you move on to part B, make sure everyone understands part A. I've seen student groups in my class in the beginning of the year, as I walk around as they're doing a set of problems, I have seen students, 3 out of the 4 people are on problem number 4, and that 4th person is on 1B, right? That means that that group has not done this. You want to make sure that everybody understands it. And as you go along the way, that will help to build that trust because people are explaining things, people are asking questions, and as a result, nobody's getting left behind. Right? We've got some people who are absent today, so we have to make sure they don't get left behind. So when they come back, we'll talk about what we did. We'll give them resources to look at and things like that so that they know what they need to accomplish to get caught up to speed. Good. Change one's mind only when persuaded by evidence and arguments. What do you think this one means? Yes.
Or if someone just states something but doesn't back it up, don't just immediately change your mind to ask why they think that's the case.
Why would people be likely to change their mind without having the statement backed up? Yes.
If they have like their friend in their group and their best friend says, "Oh, this is what's right," and then they just follow what their friend says.
Absolutely. There might be a relationship there between group members, and you just kind of honor that relationship. But that's not necessarily going to honor our desire for understanding, to learn, right? Sometimes that social status is enough. Oh, this person's been known to get good grades, we'll trust her, right? Oh, she's always getting a high score on the science test, she's probably right. Well, there's a chance she is, but you want to make sure that every claim that's being made is substantiated by evidence and reasoning. So it's important that we honor the process of how we build scientific knowledge. Okay, so make a claim, support it. That way we really know whether or not that's the way we want to follow, pursue. Okay. Criticize the idea and not the person. Criticize the idea and not the person. Again, I don't want to keep bringing up those groups that are all friends, but I've heard people say things like, "Of course you think that, you're a moron," right? And they're trying to be joking, but it can be hurtful, right? Especially if 3 of the people are friends and that 4th person in the group isn't really a friend of theirs. So we always want to make sure that when you disagree with something, you do this in a way where you're not attacking the person. Can you talk about how you chose your reference level to be gravitational energy being 0 there? Can you talk about how you knew there was dissipated energy as a result of this interaction? So that's what you want to think about with how you engage in these interactions. We want to make sure that we're not attacking a person. What's wrong with you that you picked gravitational energy as here, right? Now you've turned that into a personal thing. What's wrong with you, okay? Like what basic fault as a person do you have that created this mistake? No, it's just we're trying to learn the physics and do so in a respectful, healthy way.
So instead of questioning them or a question they asked, would you instead just ask them to explain more as to why they think that?
Absolutely, and if you do have a question, say, help me to understand how you got that. You could say, I'm getting a different result, and I'm just curious, where our results are similar and where our results are the same. Any kind of back and forth where you're doing it in a respectful way is gonna lead to progress for all members involved. So, any other questions on any of these skills that I've introduced to you? These are sometimes called soft skills because they're not restricted to a particular content area. But these are skills that are going to be beneficial for you with all of the relationships and group work experiences that you have. There are things that you should consider putting on college applications, on job applications, because the most commonly sought after skill in an employee that employers look for is the ability to work effectively in teams and in groups. So this is something that you can take with you. I have had students email me on the first day of their college experience, and they have said to me, we've got to do group work in my intro to biology class. Some students were moaning because they didn't like group projects, but they said, I feel totally comfortable because I have these skills to use and the language of these skills to say, hey, let's make sure no one gets left behind. Hey, what do you think? How can we encourage you to participate? And these were the tools that they could use to make their group work effective. So we will be quizzed on these. The quiz for this will not just be a random listing of the 10. It's going to be an application of them, because that's where they would find themselves playing out in real life. So I have some snippets of conversations I've overheard from physics groups and their conversations, and I'll put those conversation snippets on a quiz, and you'll have to identify the 2 or 3 social skills that are being demonstrated, or the 2 or 3 that need to be demonstrated because the interaction is not a positive one. Okay. That's where we are with our introduction to the group work and social skills. Okay. Thank you.